Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video. Before we begin, did you know screenshots from the cancelled Star Wars game 1313, which would have put the player in the Coruscant Undercity, just leaked? This isn't the first leak, but this is the most recent one, and I've covered it over on my second channel, X2. I'll put a link to that in the upper right hand corner and also down in the description. Anyway, today I wanted to discuss some content from Star Wars Alphabet Squadron, not the second book, the sequel that just came out, so no spoilers, but the first one. And I discussed recently the fact that I do have some problems with Alphabet Squadron. The space combat especially I find to be a little disappointing, and the general world building, especially after the Battle of Endor, leaves a little to be desired in my opinion, but that's not really the book's fault, that's sort of the hand it was dealt. However, I do think there is a lot of interesting stuff in there relating to the Galactic Civil War era, and that's because one of the main characters, Yrica Quell, is a defected TIE pilot. She served in an elite squadron within the Empire, but because of Operation Cinder, she left and was forced to join the New Republic. And this is sort of interesting because it ties into the general discussion that we will be having today. And Yrica is a cool character because we get to see somebody who's been incredibly affected by Imperial propaganda. Even after defecting and really throwing it all in with the New Republic, she still sometimes subconsciously falls back on her indoctrinated teachings. She frequently refers to the Alliance and the New Republic as being lawless. She praises the order of the Empire. She justifies the destruction of Alderaan and sees the rebels as being in the wrong, at least somewhat. And most interestingly, I think she believed that the Empire could have been good and that perhaps it even was for a very long time. And as objective Star Wars readers and viewers, we know that this isn't true and that Palpatine's plans and his doings were always foul and they were always evil. He was doing terrible things to people since the very beginning, engineering the Clone Wars and whatever else. But it's not just Yrica who feels this way about the Empire, and it really does seem like a lot of people in the galaxy would have. Although she isn't technically speaking for anybody in particular in this subsequent paragraph, I think she sums up how a lot of people would have felt. She says, "The Emperor began by promising to reorder the decaying and corrupt Republic after the Clone Wars, and he did. The corporate powers lost influence, petty crime rates dropped, local governments had to answer directly to him if they failed or abused their people." Now, is all that true? I mean, from a certain point of view, yes. Palpatine did remove the influence of these mega corporations, but that influence existed largely because of his engineering of the Clone Wars, and if we look to Legends, the Sith had really been playing up that angle for a long time. It was really just another way for them to exert power from the shadows. However, even in canon, the mega corporations were coaxed into war by Palpatine, so yeah, they had influence and they used it negatively, but that's partially because of him. And what it meant by the corporate powers lost influence is that they were nationalized by the Empire. So yeah, this is really a lie. When you say the corporate powers lose influence, it's supposed to be that they lose influence over their citizens, but that power is not returned to the people, whether democratically, as would be the case if the corporation was nationalized by like a democratic government, or by making the corporations just less influential, removing their Senate seats or whatever else. No, instead the power was simply transferred into Palpatine's hands directly. So the corporations have lost their influence, but instead it's now in the hands of a tyrant. And this was a really common strategy that Palpatine employed during the Clone Wars. He vilified things and groups, all as a plan to help consolidate his power and sometimes to sow discord among the galaxy that he could use to his advantage. You can also look at this in the way that droids were villainized, or how Palpatine stoked xenophobia across the galaxy, or whatever else. Her next point is that petty crime rates dropped, and that's probably true. Palpatine would have most likely been very tough on crime, at least in the core, but what do you know, that too is a pretext for more nefarious purposes. As we see in the real world, a tough on crime stance can certainly have ulterior motives. For Palpatine's case, making the galaxy seem like a lawless place allows him to enact very strict laws with punishment freely handed out against political opponents or smugglers, or basically everyone who threatened Imperial rule. It's interesting because this is an idea that George Lucas Lucas explicitly channeled when creating the character of Palpatine, and I've talked about this before on the channel, but I'd like to just read the quote as a whole for all of those "the Empire was actually good" people. So Lucas said, and I quote, "The Empire is like America 10 years from now, after Nixonian gangsters assassinated the Emperor and were elevated to power in a rigged election, created civil disorder by instigating race riots, aiding rebel groups, and allowing the crime rate to rise to the point where a total control police state was welcomed by the people." As a side note, Star Wars Legends, specifically the Incredible Cross sections for Revenge of the Sith, I believe, says that Palpatine used a potential threat of barbarians from outside the galaxy to justify the building of massive star destroyers, and I think he would have done the exact same thing with the Yuuzhan Vong. People say that Palpatine created the Empire to fight off the Yuuzhan Vong, but that's not true. The Yuuzhan Vong would have been at best an excuse to further militarize. Palpatine created the Empire for himself because he wanted power. I don't think he truly feared anything, and making super weapons that would have been good at defeating the Yuuzhan Vong or any other evil force was really just a pleasant side effect of the evil shit that he was doing in his own galaxy. It's all about framing things and misinformation. I mean, crime rate might not even have went down because the Empire totally restricted free speech. The media was completely gutted and replaced with an imperial substitute, and anything that didn't come from the Emperor would have been propaganda at best or fake news. Anyway, she next talks about how local governments had to answer directly to Palpatine if they failed or abused their people, and again, that's all about direction. It's not that local governments now couldn't do anything evil against their people, it's that they had no sovereignty and no self-determination. Local governments couldn't stand up for themselves, they couldn't make their own laws, they couldn't leave the Empire. I mean, we saw what happened with the Wookiees, for example. They were almost wholly enslaved in the name of the greater good, i.e. the construction of the Death Star. But as long as the local governments weren't taking advantage of their people, well, why does it even matter? So yeah, the brainwashing, the propaganda, and the reframing of history was incredibly successful by the Empire. And Yrica wasn't even born to like a noble imperial family or anything. She lived on a space station. Not only that, but she's pretty progressive for imperial standards, at least, because, you know, she actually left. We get a following line after that excerpt I just read you guys, explaining that everything she's learned is basically because of her education, but she had heard rumors that maybe there was more to the story. Maybe that the Emperor's ultimate goal was actually just the militarization of the Republic, or maybe that a group known as the Jedi had somehow forced his hand, despite the fact that, based on what she had heard, the Jedi were basically an irrelevant cult that didn't really have very many members. So let's talk about Operation Cinder, because in the Star Wars canon universe, it's that point where people just flocked away from the Empire. There were other points like that, including, I think most notably, the destruction of Alderaan, but even that, and the Empire's other atrocities, their many genocides, as Yrica recognized, could be justified by some means, whether to win a war or to keep down a local rebellion or whatever else. However, Operation Cinder, which after Palpatine's death saw the wholesale destruction of worlds seemingly at random, was without any tactical justification. Even the most hard-line Imperials, if they had a little bit of good in them, could not deny that what the Empire was doing was purely evil. So anyone really who was left at that point probably just didn't care. So yeah, I do think that's an interesting little story about the power of Imperial propaganda and how Palpatine actually was liked after the Clone Wars, at least for a while, because even Yrica realizes that by the Galactic Civil War era, corruption and whatever else was beginning to sneak back into the Empire, and it wasn't looking very good. But that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you thought of this topic and this video down below. Sorry, no hashtag AskEck today. I'm running super late because I did do that other video for X2, again on the leaks from Star Wars 1313. I'll link to that down below. Anyway, I look forward to hearing from you guys. Have a good one. Please help me out by growing the second channel. We're trying to get it to 100,000 by the end of the year, but either way, I'll see you when I see you. Be safe, and may the Force be with you.